Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LoCoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin Conlon, owner of Team LoCoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com.
All right, y'all, welcome back. I'm with Coach Laurin, aka, you already know, it's Blonde. I always feel funny whenever I do say your name though, because I'll be like, oh yeah, so Laurin said, and then I'm like, wait, really hope people have picked up that this is also her name, because then it's just really weird. The other day, I think it's Karina's client. Somebody posted on the team page, and her name is Laurin with an E at the end, so Laurin. I imagine that's
okay,
say
yeah.
it. And Rye was like, who keeps spelling Laurin's name wrong? It was multiple times in the paragraph. He's like, what? I don't understand. I'm like, no, that's a different class. It was so funny because I was like, no, not spelling Laurin's name wrong.
No, but when you do it, it sounds like you're talking in third person.
It does.
You're talking to me.
It's so awkward. I'm like, so Laurin wrote this article. What is this loser talking in the third person for? But today's podcast is going to be all about your diet during pregnancy, really just nutrition for pregnancy. And this is something that you have a lot of schooling and training with. Of course, you've just finished the internship, so you've done a lot of reading and researching about this. And I thought this would be a really awesome podcast for people who are not only pregnant, but are looking to get pregnant. And there are certain things to do and certain things to avoid that are really important and can, of course, help your baby, help you and your baby during pregnancy. So I'm going to kick it off to you, and yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about this one. I think that this is a topic that most people are very surprised to find out that I am pretty passionate about.
Yeah.
I think
I'm surprised.
I know, I was surprised. Trust me, I had to do pregnancy and lactation rotations in my internship. And then when I was on one of my staff relief clinical rotations, I spent a lot of time in the family center with new moms, and I just really, really loved it. So we were thinking about doing maybe one on the postpartum period as well at some point if people are interested in this. But yeah, we're just going to kind of talk about some things to be thinking about, and even some stuff that you can start if you're somebody that wants to get pregnant in the future, even if it's not in the next couple of months, the next year, whatever the case, just things to kind of be aware of. And then obviously most of these recommendations are for during the pregnancy, just to keep you healthy, keep the baby healthy, and then also to set you up for kind of losing the weight after the baby and just being healthy after the fact. Mm-hmm. So just kind of a basic overview, a normal gestation is going to be about 40 weeks. A typical healthy baby is going to be in the weight range of about 5.5 to 8.8 pounds. So that's kind of what you're Lauren's shaking her head already.
No, I'm just...
Oh, Jesus, 8.8 pounds.
No, I was a pretty big baby, so.
Were you really?
Yeah, I think I was over 9 pounds. Maybe 9.
Woo!
Yeah.
Are
you surprised? Really?
She's tall.
So yeah, Karina. Everybody knows that I'm tall.
You kind of froze. Okay.
Oh. So tall.
Karina, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, so I think we're just gonna kind of talk about some things to kind of take into consideration. So things that really matter when looking to get pregnant or when you are pregnant are going to be your pre-birth weight. So we really want to be in a good BMI range, which I know that BMI is not a great indicator of body fat to muscle, all of that stuff, because it doesn't take into consideration muscle. But as far as clinical use, it is kind of some guardrails as to where you should be. So if you are somebody that is in a normal weight range, which is going to be the optimal situation, of course, you would be at a BMI between 18.5 and about 24.9. So for a lot of people that we see that are competitors, their BMI is a lot lower than that. So this is something to kind of consider if you are thinking about wanting to get pregnant, but you're also a competitor. It's important to kind of think about time frame with that, just to give yourself enough time, your body enough time to reach a more quote unquote healthy and sustainable BMI and body fat percentage, to be able to support pregnancy and things of that nature. So if you are a normal BMI, which was in that weight range, we're going to want to see you gain about 25 to 35 pounds total during the pregnancy. So what that looks like is about a pound per week in the second and third trimester. So for people that aren't familiar, the first trimester is going to be up until about 12 weeks. Second trimester is going to be 13 to 28 weeks. And then third trimester is going to be 29 weeks to carrying out the actual pregnancy. So most of the nutritional changes are going to come in the second and third trimester. So yeah, you're going to do about a pound per week in the second and third. And then if you are somebody that falls into more of the overweight BMI, which again is a little dicey because people that have a lot of muscle can also actually fall into this category just because the BMI does not take that into consideration. But that's going to be a BMI range of about 25 to 29. So if you are somebody that's healthy, you're active, you're fit, you could fall into that and be absolutely fine. The recommended weight gain though is going to go down a little bit. So if you're somebody that's starting off with a normal BMI, you're going to want to do about 25 to 35 pounds total. Whereas somebody that's starting off a little overweight would just be about 15 to 25 pounds total. And that's going to look like about a 0.6 pound per week in the second and third trimester. So something that I think is interesting is like people will get pregnant and they think that they have to consume like a shit ton more calories. Everybody's talking about cravings, things like that. And ultimately, every journey is going to be different, but people can very easily put on an unnecessary amount of weight, especially in the first pregnancy when you haven't been through it before. You don't really know what to expect, hormones all over the place. So I think it's really important to kind of point this out that for a normal BMI, 25 to 35 pounds, and for overweight, it's even less. That's 15 to 25 pounds. And if you think the baby's already 8, you're really only gaining another 7 to 10 pounds over that. So it really should be a nice controlled, healthy weight gain.
Yeah, and I think that, so before we even kind of go further into that, I've worked with people not necessarily during their pregnancy, like for this reason, but typically pre-pregnancy, like a lot of either ex-competitors or people who've dieted a lot, like trying to get their hormones back on track and trying to get their body prepped to actually get pregnant, meaning they have a normal cycle beforehand. And that's actually one of the hardest parts, is making sure that like hormones are regulated in a way that like you actually can conceive. But typically what ends up happening is in this journey of getting people's hormones back on track to actually be able to conceive the baby, they are now losing their physique goals, right? Like they can't say like, hey, I really want to have abs and get pregnant, or they want to say that, but I'm like, listen, that's not going to be effective. Especially what happens to most people, especially women who compete or diet very aggressively, is that their progesterone basically tanks. And that is, of course, how you're going to ovulate, and that's how you're going to be able to conceive. So when you are getting your progesterone up, though, that can lead to some not so awesome body comp changes or shifts, but that's actually really exciting if you're trying to get pregnant. So it is important to understand that when we are talking about healthy weight and healthy weight ranges, this also just doesn't mean that you have abs, right? Like, or maybe you do, like you might have abs and be able to get pregnant. That's totally fine. But for some people, you can't be chasing lean, like losing weight and having a leaner physique while also trying to conceive. It typically just doesn't happen. Of course, there's going to be anomalies. There's going to be like, oh, I was prepping for a show and I got pregnant. Of course, there's going to be those people, right? But most people who are trying to work on their hormones and stabilize everything pre-pregnancy, you likely are going to be in a situation where, hey, I know you might want to lose, a little bit of weight, but it's actually going to be disadvantageous because now we're going to push ourselves back, 6 more months. And isn't the goal to be pregnant by the end of the year? Yeah. So it's just a really important thing to understand, like beforehand, getting your blood work done, making sure that you have a regular ovulatory cycle, which can be a huge thing in and of itself for people who have dieted very, very frequently for most of their life.
And something to add to that as well is if you are, like Lauren said, you can be somebody that does carry a leaner physique and still get pregnant. We're not saying that whatsoever. It just is oftentimes the people that are at those really like Lindley levels is they have amenorrhea, they're not getting their period, things of that nature. So that's what she was talking about, having to restore those hormones. But if you are somebody that falls under that normal BMI range, so if you are sitting at below 18.5 BMI, this is a clinical perspective, obviously, you are putting yourself and your baby at greater health risks. So I'm not going to name all of them, but you can have a very low birth weight baby. You could have a preterm baby, neurological dysfunction, things of that nature. So it's very important to kind of honor the fact that our bodies are made a certain way as females. I actually just had a conversation with a client the other day about, she was mentioning that she tends to carry most of her like adiposity around her hips and things like that. But this is a biological thing we were built for reproduction. So yeah, everybody's going to be distributed differently as far as body fat goes and things of that nature, but women have wider hips, things of that nature for this reason, to get pregnant. So it's something that you kind of just have to accept, embrace, and be grateful for if you are somebody that wants to get pregnant, obviously. So, and then I did kind of want to, I think we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of like energy requirements, because like I said, people are like, I'm pregnant, I'm going to eat all of the hamburgers and like all this weird shit that I'm craving. And it's like, okay. So for the first trimester, which I just mentioned was up until about 12 weeks. So at that point, you're already 3 months in, and it's only about 9 months. So you're a third of the way there, obviously first trimester of 3. Your nutrition needs actually do not change from when you were not pregnant. So yes, there's going to be some hormone things going on. You might have some new cravings and things of that nature, but as far as actual caloric need, it's not any higher than it was before you were pregnant. So it's not until the second trimester that we're going to see some of those things change. So 13 to 28 weeks, we're looking at about 300 to 350 extra calories per day, which again, 350 calories is not that much. Like, that's nothing. That's like a snack.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally is a snack though, because you could do like an apple with peanut butter and you're at 300 calories. So
Peanut butter.
Boom.
Our
there
sponsor.
It is. See our last podcast for more on peanut butter. I always gotta be bringing it up in every single podcast. It's that good. God bless the makers of peanut butter.
We're just gonna start like eating peanut butter on the next podcast, just like
I'm telling
on
you,
camera.
I was trying to be considerate, and I did it before we came on here because people do watch this. But I would be all for that. Just
we do a mukbang.
Finishing a jar. Okay, so then in the third trimester, so that last like 11-ish weeks, that's going to be more towards about an extra 450 calories per day, which is a little higher, just adding a little more bulk to your meals. And then what I always find interesting is the protein and the carb and the fat situation. So the protein requirements are actually just 1.1 gram per kilogram body weight for people that are pregnant, which for us and a lot of clients, this is kind of where I find that it's dicey in the clinical side of things, because these are all based on like DRIs, RDAs, things of that nature. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be enough for everybody. So the recommendation is actually 1.1 gram per kilogram, where we typically have people at 1 gram per pound. Or your other option is baseline of 71 grams of protein per day, which is relatively low for most people. I would say most people could probably hit around 100 without too much of a struggle. And then up from there, if you're not used to it, it can get a little more difficult, but those are the recommendations. And then something else is the carbohydrate requirement is at least 175 grams of carbs per day. Just to easy. We're like, sign me up. I nail all these boxes. Peanut butter and carbs.
And carbs? Perfect.
It's me. Well, Lauren always posts me a carb, and I'm like constantly eating peanut butter, so this is perfect.
I really am.
I am a carb. Yeah, carb part 2. It's like
I had a lot.
Oh,
it was
amazing.
Great. It was so good. It was totally worth it.
So yeah, 175 grams of carbs, which in my personal opinion is nothing, but to some people, again, that are kind of coming from a chronic dieting background, things like that, it can seem like a bit much, but this is for obviously neurological support, energy requirements, things like that for you and baby. So important to get to the 175. And then as far as fat goes, there's not really like a specific gram or calorie percentage, but it's more so about the quality of the fat that you're getting. So we want to make sure that we're getting about 650 milligrams of omega-3s and then a minimum of 200 milligrams. Nailed it. A minimum of 200 milligrams DHA. So that's kind of the overarching goal there is just adequate carbs, good fats, and then we would probably recommend people to, I just said probably twice in a row, we would probably recommend people to do a little higher than that basic baseline recommendation of the 1.1 gram per kilogram, especially if you're active, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, if anybody knows anything about some of the recommendations for food, a lot of them are minimums so that you don't get like sick and like injured.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily an optimal range. So when people hear you'll see protein listed as at least 50 grams a day. And it's like, yeah, having 50 grams a day prevents you from like being really sick. So that doesn't mean that that's what you should be focusing on. It means that you should be likely getting more for optimal levels. Again, if you aren't eating any, this is going to be a good target. But if you want to be healthy leading into your pregnancy and during your pregnancy, we would 100% recommend having more protein. There are certain proteins or certain foods to avoid that do have protein, which I do want you to touch on. But one thing I thought was really interesting too, and I remember learning about this, it's kind of like a refresher. I took one of those, like I was in dietetics as well in undergrad, and I took one of these classes. It's actually the class that made me switch. It's so funny how
is
you
it
love
nutrition
this.
across the life cycle?
Yes.
That for some reason that class like triggers people.
It was honestly the teacher that was the absolute worst. And she wasn't like a bad person, but she was just not a good teacher. And I was already kind of like up to here with dietetics when I had that class, and I was like, nope, I can't do this. I'm going to get kicked out of an internship. Not going to be for me. But I do remember learning about this, and it is so interesting. But it's actually, I guess, not bad that you don't, that wasn't really great grammar, but so during, just forget I said that. First trimester, a lot of people do feel very sick, and it was like a very common thing. So it's actually like a good thing that you don't need any additional food, right? Like that would be really bad if that was like the time that you actually needed the most. So it is good to know, like, hey, as long as you can kind of keep around the same intake, like you're probably going to be good to go. The second two is like what the second and third is when you're really going to want to pick that up. So it's also really good because some people have no issues whatsoever. Like they feel fine, but other people get really hit hard, especially that first trimester. So let's touch on some of the foods that you should probably avoid. The one thing that's really sad is the caffeine, but of course, it's not going to be good for your child. Same thing with alcohol, particularly in the beginning, right? And I know that there is some people say like in the third trimester, you at that point you can pretty much not obviously drink a lot. Don't misquote me there, but like have a glass of wine like every once in a while. And I've heard that it still kind of freaks me out. Even as much as I love alcohol, I still feel like I would be like, I don't know. There's a little slow.
Yeah, I'm like, I've come this far, I'm gonna hold off.
Right. It's like a little bit scary, but apparently there is a body of literature and doctors who say like there are certain things that are done developing. You can have a glass of wine every once in a while, again, not like an everyday kind of a thing.
Sure.
Once in a while. Same thing with caffeine though. A lot of stuff is going to pass right through. So like you don't want to be giving your unborn child a ton of caffeine either. I can imagine that wouldn't be very good. So two really sad things, but again, it's for the health of your baby. It's not about you at this point. It is going to be absorbing every single thing that you eat. And it really is a good time to focus on like quality foods and like actually caring about what we eat, which is so the opposite of what most people do. Like, you were saying like, oh, pregnancy cravings, whatever. Like, yeah, that's totally fine. Like have whatever your pregnancy craving is, whether it's like Mexican food or ice cream, like don't not have that.
Right.
But also make sure that you are eating quality foods, because everything that you are eating is now not only affecting you, it is affecting this child. And it's just, I don't know why there is such a lack of, like, that's not like the cool narrative. Like, it's just like, yeah, eat whatever you want when you're pregnant. It's like, this should be a really good time to eat really high quality foods, because you are going to influence their health. And there's even research to show that like, obviously the circumstances that like people are brought up in, like one of the like classic studies was, I can't remember the country, if it was like Russia or somewhere over in East Europe, there was like really bad famines. And basically during these famines, like a lot of those babies afterwards were prone to obesity because they had, we'll call them the thrifty genes, which that's kind of like what has been labeled over time. But because their bodies were so, basically the mothers were so starved, the babies learned like, I need to hold on to every single thing that I get. When they were now adults, they were more prone to this, which is, it's just crazy to think. But it is really important. And just like, so my mom was gestational diabetic, which is partly why I was so big. And I was just like big baby. And she, gained a lot of weight, even though she was eating pretty healthy. That still just happens with gestational diabetes. So she's more prone to having type 2 diabetes as she gets older, or just having blood sugar issues, which she's actually now seeing. We have to like really be on top of her diet, which she is, but just, we have to watch that. And then also with me, I could be potentially predisposed to having that as well later in life. So it's so fascinating how this affects you. So it really is important to understand, like, what are you eating and like what are you putting in your body to then give the baby.
Yeah. And as we kind of discussed at the beginning, doing this now before pregnancy, during pregnancy is setting you up to be so much more better off in the postpartum period. And that is a really sensitive time for women. So it's important to do what you can with what you can in that 9 months and beforehand to set yourself up for success after that. So if we do a podcast on that, I did write a paper going in pretty good depth about like omega-3s and carbohydrates and like the relationship in helping to prevent postpartum depression. So diet has a huge influence. We know that to be true. So can you still hear me? I think my right headphone died.
Yeah.
Okay. Like just this one. I'm going to keep it in though, because I look stupid if I just have one. It's like I'm wearing like a Bluetooth.
You're so cool. You're so 2000. Get your BlackBerry out. You're just like.
I feel like I should have like a belt. Oh my God, now I sound like you. I should have my BlackBerry in my belt. If you could see me, I'm like literally, why am I doing this? I'm literally like halfway on the ground. I don't know why I felt the need to do that. Jesus.
Listen, peanut butter and tool. We keep peanut butter in the tool belt. That's what it is.
That's what it's for. That's what it's for. And literally, it has that big pocket for a reason to stick your jar of peanut butter in there. Anyways, setting yourself up. So the diet's going to be important, and then as well as exercise. So I think people get a little concerned when they get pregnant that they can't exercise anymore, and that could not be further from the truth. So I did just want to touch on that briefly. We won't go in super depth about it, but essentially, as long as you're doing movements that are not going to cause like drastic pressure to your abdomen, you're fine. So I wouldn't suggest, this is making me laugh, doing burpees. Like,
your belly's just like,
I wanted to just do burpees or like burpee broad jumps or something like that, but you could
don't do those anyway. Just let's be honest.
Maybe just leave those out completely forever. But you can certainly
you're doing like the prone
else.
row warm up. Your belly is just like flopping.
I can literally picture me in the oh man. But yeah, you can literally do, obviously if you're somebody that's not working out, like don't jump into a hardcore routine when you get pregnant because you're worried. Like you can just incrementally start adding exercise in. But if you're somebody that's working out pretty consistently, like you will be totally fine to continue on with a workout plan. And that's going to be dependent on the person and how far they can go throughout the pregnancy feeling okay. You're going to have to dial it back, the intensity, obviously. And kind of like a rule of thumb is to make sure that you can hold like a conversation while you're working out is kind of a good place to be when you're pregnant. So yeah, I just want to touch on that really fast. But yeah, like Lauren said, the caffeine, you want to do less than 200 milligrams while you're pregnant. So I think about 1 cup of coffee typically has about 150. So maybe just stick to about a cup and you'd be okay. So we wanted to touch on the foods to avoid. So there are a decent amount of foods that can cause risk to the infant. So anything that's unpasteurized, essentially, so like unpasteurized cheese, unpasteurized milk, juices, any raw sprouts, things like that don't go through that process. And then cold lunch meats like deli meat, hot dogs, eggs, poultry that are not cooked to the appropriate temperature should be avoided. So obviously you don't want to eat undercooked chicken, don't eat it then. That's pretty much a no-brainer. I think the one that people don't really I think the one people don't really know about is deli meat. Like I have sandwiches every day. That kind of sucks. But try to avoid that. Then just make sure everything is cooked to appropriate temperature. So high mercury containing fish is another one. So mercury can be pretty detrimental. Fortunately, there's only about 4 fish that are very high mercury, and I don't know who the hell is eating these fish. Tilefish, shark, swordfish, and king mackerel are the 4 that you want to avoid. So if you have a bunch of shark in your freezer, dump it out and switch it out for something like salmon, because that's going to...
I sent Lauren this like atrocious meme the other day of somebody like tickling a shark. Like it was like a baby, but it was like a mini shark, and they were tickling.
I feel like
I sent Lauren the worst stuff.
The worst. The worst. She so knows it's gonna make me uncomfortable, so she sends it. I'm literally. If you're watching, can you see this? I'm minding my own business at home, only to receive this. But not only that, it doesn't stop there.
So good.
Ew! Oh.
I'm a monster. I'm sorry.
Oh, man. I'm sweating.
So don't consume the shark. Why is tuna, does tuna have mercury?
So tuna is one that should be consumed a little. So going to the next thing, like, you are absolutely welcome and encouraged to consume seafood, especially things that are high in omega-3s, because we already established that those are important during pregnancy, obviously. So 8 to 12 ounces of seafood outside of those random 4 fish that you will never purchase, you can consume during the week, but tuna should be limited to 6 ounces of that 8 to 12. I don't exactly know the reason. I don't know if maybe there's a little bit of mercury in there.
I think it's because they eat ones that have,
that could
you know what
be.
I mean? Like the bigger fish eat other ones, so
Yeah.
it kind of like is like a compounding effect.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, like a lot of people will eat tuna like raw, so like clearly don't do that.
Right.
Any kind of like raw stuff. But yeah, I mean, unless tilefish is my favorite fish, so I don't know. It's gonna be pretty hard for me to to not eat that.
Personally, I like the shark.
Yeah.
So
tilefish is specialty. But so don't eat those, and yeah, just kind of minimize your caffeine, and understand that there's other things that have caffeine in it too. Like obviously some teas, especially like a black tea, will have caffeine. Some green tea, soda. Like I don't drink soda, but there's caffeine in soda, and just stuff like that. Like just make sure that all of that is tallied up. And again, the alcohol stuff, talk with your provider, but I would just say like probably just steer clear of that.
Yeah.
And probably just
committed for so long. Just
probably
hold
just
off.
the best idea.
Yeah.
And then fluids, just in general, being hydrated, because it's not only just now for yourself, but there is a really big increase in a lot of the weight too comes from like the plasma fluid. Like or the plasma volume. I remember learning about that too. Like some of the biggest weight increases is, especially in the first trimester, is not necessarily the baby's weight. It's just all of those fluid shifts that you have. So being properly hydrated is going to be really important for that, on top of other reasons too.
Yeah, so we're looking at about 3 liters per day during pregnancy. That actually goes up a little bit during lactation, so after birth, but around 3 to 4 liters is typically recommended. And also, I know that some people will have some constipation and things like that when they're pregnant, so just making sure that you're keeping the fluid up can help prevent that and just get rid of some of that unnecessary discomfort. And then I did want to mention as well, since we're talking about foods to kind of avoid, the only 2 sweeteners that have been proven to be generally recognized as safe are stevia and sugar. So anything other than that should probably kind of be avoided.
Like artificial sweeteners?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, I know for a fact, I'm assuming they're talking mostly about artificial, although they do list sugar here. But because I'm thinking of other things such as honey, like I know that should be avoided in children that are young because it can contain botulism. So I'm assuming that it's probably more of like things that you would pour into your coffee.
Okay. So any kind of sweetener, and probably focus mostly probably like on whole foods and stick with all the other stuff maybe in like small amounts, but yeah. I didn't know the honey thing. That's good to know.
Yeah, so I forget, I think it's up to
I'm like, hey kids, look at all this honey.
Like, squirting it in their mouth, like, we want some sugar. It can contain botulism, so that's a good one to definitely avoid. And then, good to know. So as far as,
let's be honest, nobody's letting me watch their kids, so
you personally don't need to worry about that, but if you wanted to write it down for somebody else, you could.
They're like, why is my 4-year-old cursing so much? He's a terror now. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Ooh, sorry. Don't let me watch your kids. Yes. So anyways, we're going to kind of talk about vitamins and minerals too. So essentially all of them, the requirement is going to go up during pregnancy, which makes complete sense. I did want to point out, if you're somebody that's consuming a diet that's high in whole grains, so especially somebody that's like vegetarian or something, you might be a little deficient in calcium due to the phytates and whole grains kind of interfere with calcium. So it might be important to consider some sort of supplementation at that point, just so you make sure, or reducing the amount of whole grains, obviously, and kind of switching to some different options. And then as far as the vitamins and minerals, the main ones that are going to be increased are going to be the vitamin A, B12, C, folate, iodine, iron, and zinc. So those are, and the amount that you need extra is not like drastic, but it is slightly increased just to support the baby as well. And so that the baby doesn't have any deficiencies. And then that kind of carries on into the lactation period as far as like formulas being enriched with certain vitamins and minerals for that reason, just to make sure that the baby is not deficient and things of that nature. So during pregnancy, those are typically the big ones that we look at, because a lot of things, like bone mineralization and things like that halt during pregnancy. So taking these vitamins, just making sure you're getting enough good things is going to help for when bone mineralization starts again after the first menstrual cycle, after the baby and things like that. So again, it's just to set you up for success.
Yeah, and all these things, are just healthy things in general. So making sure that you are eating a healthy diet, a wide varied diet is going to be really helpful. But also knowing things, hey, avoid this or increase that. And, there's tons of, obviously, not only prenatal vitamins, but also like, during pregnancy vitamins, but stuff like that. Like, even if you're not pregnant right now, but you're looking to get pregnant, a lot of times people don't know right away. Like some people do, of course, but other people, it's kind of like a lag period of like a few weeks. So if you're trying to get pregnant, doing these things is likely going to be helpful too, right? Like you would probably recommend that, like make sure you have enough fluids, like make sure you're probably avoiding these foods and et cetera, because typically the first trimester is when more things can go wrong. So if you're already kind of prepped beforehand, it's going to be an easier transition to conceive.
Yeah, it's like don't wait until you know that you're pregnant to stop eating deli meat or to stop whatever. Yeah. Do that beforehand while you're trying to get pregnant, just to make sure. And then I think maybe a topic for another day that we could talk about that I think would be interesting, but also just very insightful for people would be having a conversation about birth control and things like that. So that might be a podcast for another time that I just thought about regarding this topic. So
yeah, and transitioning, if you are transitioning off of birth control, you are going to have a period where you most likely aren't ovulating. Right away, especially initially, because that's what birth control does. It stops ovulation. That's the whole point. But some people, they immediately get off and they have no problem ovulating again. But other people particularly people who've had a long dieting history, coupled with, birth control use, it can take a little bit longer. And that's just where you need to track things. And just a little caveat, because I feel like I always have to share this now. There's been a surge in like bands and apps and all of these things, right, where it tells you like, hey, you're safe, or no, you're ovulating. And there was a huge company that did get sued. I don't know if it ever went through, but a lot of people basically got pregnant when they shouldn't have, or when the app told them that they couldn't, right? And so the best way, if anybody's listening, is trying to track their ovulation, do a morning temperature reading. That is the best way to do it. Is it harder to do than wearing like a wrist strap or checking an app on your phone? Yeah. But if you actually are looking to, to see, you will notice a temperature increase, and it will be for a few days or depending on how long your ovulation is. And the only way to do that is to track it. Just write it down either in your phone or have a notebook, whatever it might be. And for some people, they're very in tune with their cycle and it pretty much comes in the same exact time. Other people, not so much, particularly people who are getting their ovulatory cycles back. It's not typically very consistent. So say you haven't had one for a while, don't expect to have it every single month like clockwork. It's going to take a little bit of time. You might have one cycle that's ovulatory, you might have another one that's anovulatory, and then kind of vice versa, and it kind of goes back and forth. So we can definitely do more on that. But I did do a podcast with Victoria on just kind of general stuff on birth control. And I talked to her, and we're actually going to do one on PCOS, like a deep dive into PCOS, because there's a lot of people. That's another term, kind of like the last one that we did about like the food intolerances. Yeah. It's kind of just like a bucket term. Like, there's some issues we don't really know about. Like, you got PCOS, but it's like, it's a lot more complex than that. So we will be doing that soon. So I think it'd be really cool to do one for lactation, just post-pregnancy in general. So if you guys liked this, let us know. I really appreciate all this really good insight. And this is so, obviously you've been in the trenches learning about this and actually doing this in your clinical rotation. So never would have thought that you would have wanted to do this, but hey, I'm here for it. I'm very happy, very pleased that we're doing this. So And I really hope you guys watch the video so you could see those ridiculous gifts that I sent her. And it just really made my day. And I'm just going to try and find the worst ones now and just send them to you, like just with no context, just sending you.
I'm going to post, like, when this comes out, I will post a like screenshot of me
Yes.
holding it up, because
Please.
I feel like that will direct people to the YouTube so that they can see it, because that was just not what I was expecting to open up on my phone, I guess is all I can really say.
Hey,
What?
you never know what you're going to get.
No, and you never know if you're only going to get one, because usually you don't just get one.
No, I go on a roll. I keep going. I'm that person. But all right, guys, thank you so much as always for tuning in. If you want to check out more articles, our programs, books, different things that we offer, you can go to teamlocofit.com. You can also apply for coaching on there as well. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you next week.